Friday.
We're talking state-sanctioned murder.
Scully and Mulder uncover a conspiracy to create a master race.
An FBI agent died because of this case.
Those are the risks we take.
Now, who can they trust
We're gonna lose them.
when anyone can be cloned? A brand new X-Files, Friday at 9, 8 Central.
Hey TV fans, Board now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 2 Episode 16. It's a biggie, it's Colony, and it's the first part of a two-parter which sets up some big mythology in the X-Files. So the episode was directed by Nick Morank, who has a pretty decent track record for genre TV. The story was co-written by David Duchovny, so him and Chris Carter came up with the story for this one, and the episode originally aired on the 10th of February 1995. It got a 15.99 in the Nelson ratings. Mulder being rushed to a military hospital, his body temperature has dropped and he's in risk of dying. They've put him in a bath. But Scully rushes in and says basically he needs the opposite of that. It's the cold which is actually keeping him alive. And that's when we go to credits. So that's something which is going to be picked up in the second part. The fun little hook. The main mystery of the episode is that Mulder and Scully start following these mysterious deaths that happen in fires across the country. So Mulder notices a pattern that the killings are being moved north, and they work out who the next killing is maybe going to be. And this is when we get the introduction of this bounty hunter played by Brian Thompson, who people would also know from Buffy, a big villain in the X-Files universe. He's almost like one of these super soldiers type thing. The way he stalks people and his look is very much like the Terminator, which is funny because Brian Thompson did have a small role at the start of the first Terminator movie. Hunting down all these different people who are connected to these murders, and he's the one committing the murders, and he's setting fires, cover things up, and it's revealed that all these people are clones, and they're clones. At some point in the episode, Mulder and Scully are contacted by someone who claims to be from the CIA. This is something which Scully questions later in the episode, but he gives them this backstory to do with like Russian experiments during the war when they came up with these clones and they were to defend the country, but at the same time, almost as like a fallback, as like a failsafe, they also created this bounty hunter style character who would then wipe out the clones if there was any question of suspicion falling on the Russians. At the heart of this episode, you really get this kind of who can you trust paranoia type feel to the episode where, as I said, I like the detective work of Mulder, where he figures out that these killings are happening in a northerly pattern across the country. So he works out logically when the next killing will be. Near the end of the episode, Scully tracks down these doctors, or this one doctor, but then he's with a bunch of lookalikes. They all look like ex-football manager Gerald Houllier, I'll say that. I know only a small percentage of people listening will get that reference, if anything, but that's what they remind me of, the look. And they say, we are the last remaining clones, we need you to protect us. So Scully puts them in protection. So it's this constant game of cat and mouse. As I said, who can you trust? That's one thing I do like about the episode, is that Scully is actually more suspicious of this CIA agent, thinks he might be setting them up for a fall, he might be setting things up, then he's actually the one who's who's trying to kill these people who are behind them. And Mulder questions this, says no, the information he's given us seems to be solid. The thing I really like about the episode is that it really commits to the premise. It really commits to what they're doing, where this bounty hunter played by Brian Thompson, who is very intimidating. He's got the big stern face, really effective character actor, but he can, once he kills someone, he can switch identities and take on their form. He also has this cool weapon, which is like an ice pick, where he like stabs them in the back of the neck, and you get this greeny substance. So all this stuff, the visuals of it are really ticking a lot of the boxes and really getting some cool retro science fiction, gooey type feels. And he's a real presence in the episode. But as I said, they really go to town on the gimmicks. So at one point, when they track down who they think is going to be the next victim, and he's in Syracuse, they arrange to meet this agent at the house of like this doctor, but the Brian Thompson character gets there first. He kills the doctor, kills the agent, and he does the switcheroo, and he says no one here as he sees Mulder and Scully. He then opens up the trunk and we see him looking in at the real guy, and he's switched identities. And it's quite a solid effect for the time where we see the transformation of the face. It actually looks pretty good for the early 90s TV. But I enjoy the fallout as well with Skinner, because Skinner calls Mulder in the next day, and Skinner at this point is very much still between the two sides and is trying to be as fair with the agents as possible, but he also has to like scold Mulder if he thinks he's jeopardizing things and going off on book, which Mulder does a lot, of course, and he's very critical, and he informs Mulder that the agent was found dead, and Mulder is like, what? That's impossible. I spoke to him. And Skinner just scolds him and gives him a warning and says, I demand a report the next day on my desk. So it's a good scene for Skinner. And in a funny sort of way, he does have a point, because he accuses Mulder of putting that agent in danger and that it's his fault he got killed, which is a little strong because the agent would have been there anyway, I'm sure. But like, I do like how he has a point, and you can sympathise with Skinner a bit in the scene, because he is just trying to do his job and trying to like keep both sides happy. But it's a good like bit of intensity from Skinner giving Mulder the warning. I do like the pacing of this episode and how it feels like almost like a conspiracy theory type thriller from the 70s, and just some of the mood and tension. I think the directing is pretty solid. Nick Morak, as I said, has a pretty good like genre track record, and once again, when they're in this dark alley later in the episode, Mulder gets knocked down by a car. And then you've got like the super or the bounty hunter in the same scene. It's when they've like linked up with this CIA agent, and at one point he switches places with the super soldier, or appears to be. I'll just say super soldier because I think that's something which is set up later on in the show. A lot of mood in that scene, and that's when Scully first starts getting suspicious. And she actually steps on the green substance, and we see that in the alley. So there's a lot of like switcheroos. There's a lot of like paranoia, like, and I think they just play with your suspicions a lot. So there's some good tension, because I know people can be like down on the X-Files when they hit you too hard with the mythology. When they hit on some good mythology earlier in the show, then it is still really effective. And I, for one, do like the detective side of the show, like the slow burn mysteries. I do enjoy the conspiracy angles, and they overdo it at times without doubt. But I think this is one of the good examples of that, where you do feel the tension. You're on the edge of your seat. What is going to happen next? Episode is that Mulder gets called in by Skinner. And this is where him and Scully go their separate ways. And Mulder's worried because he's been hit by the car. He has that funny line where Scully asks him what is he going to say, and Mulder says something like, well, I'll just tell him the truth, I got hit by a car, which is fair enough. But he's worried, I don't have this report ready, he's going to chew me out again. And Skinner says, no, it's nothing to do with that. Being contacted by your father, there's a family emergency. So that's when the episode takes another little twist. And Mulder goes home. I think this is the first time we see his father, which I noticed he takes on the appearance quite similar to the cigarette smoking man, and he's puffing away on the cigarette. So that's maybe an intentional choice. And there's a lot of mystery about the way he's talking, and Mulder gets a shot of a young girl talking to his mother, and it's a girl we've seen earlier in the episode with this other doctor, the one they tracked down with the CIA agents. Like, well, who's that girl Mother's talking to? Your sister. So Samantha appears to be back. And this actress I know is quite a well-known Canadian actress. I know she's in like the V miniseries. I also saw her in the Fourth Omen movie, so I know she's a local actress who appears in quite a lot. But she is a great choice to play the grown-up version of Samantha. So Fox, goes in and talks to her, and it appears as though she's returned home after all these years. Another nice little touch is that Mulder's mother is clearly ill, but she asks Mulder that has to be her, right? And Mulder says, I can't see who else it is. And I like that because I think secretly Mulder is questioning it, because why wouldn't you? And it's sort of his motto, to question everything. And is there some sort of government thing behind it? But he tells a little white lie to the mother. It's like reassuring her, go to sleep, Mum, have some rest. So I like that as a character moment for Mulder. He then talks to Samantha, and they reminisce, and she seems to know things from their childhood, so that reassures him that it probably is her. And she tells this whole backstory about how she was returned by her abductors, by the aliens, age 9, and she was adopted into a family. They raised her, and she lost all memory of the abduction. But then a few years back, she remembered. She started getting memories and trauma. So she wanted to seek out the truth. She wanted to obviously look into her past. Claims that she's now in danger because her adopted family are now hunting her down. And that seems to be in the form of this bounty hunter who is looking for her. And that's when we kind of cut between the two sides of the plot, where Scully tracks down this doctor, and there's a group of them and takes them into protected custody. But by the end of the episode, it seems like they've been tracked down by the bounty hunter at the facility. And the big cliffhanger of the episode, which is a great cliffhanger, is that eventually Mulder gets in contact with Scully. They keep missing each other, but she's at this hotel, and Mulder comes in. But it turns out it's not going to be Mulder, it's going to be the bounty hunter pretending to be Mulder, because Mulder actually calls Scully on the phone. Now, it's possible it could be the other way round, but I think the chances are it is the bounty hunter who's in the hotel or motel with Scully. And that's the big cliffhanger. So it's a really good cliffhanger. I think it's a really meaty, gripping episode with some dramatic stuff going on, and I look forward to watching the second part, because really sometimes the second part can nail the landing, lets the side down a little bit, so we'll see how it goes. But Colony, I think, is a really strong episode, and it's a really good example of the mythology working at its best, because I know they start setting up this idea of sort of colonies to do with DNA, sampling, and they're using almost like the metaphor of the bee sort of colonies, but they're doing it with alien style DNA. I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. MVP, I don't always do this, but I'll give it to the Brian Thompson bounty hunter, because he's a great villain in the episode. He's really effective and makes an impact, and I know they bring him back So, but the second part is Endgame, which I will get to next week. I'll try and keep these weekly for a while, but that's my thoughts on Connolly. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Keep watching TV, keep watching the X-Files, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.